Hi, this is Vicki. I am going to be doing a tutorial on this album that I made for my son and his bride. They are having a wedding January 15th of next year, and they wanted to do the Instax guest book where you take the picture, you insert it, and then somebody can write a note to them, their name, and whatever. So I got this idea from the way my parents' wedding album was done, and I tried to duplicate it as best I could remember. I don't have access to those books right now, but this is what I came up with. This part I did on the Cricut, but all the cutting that I needed to do and everything else was just done with tools that I had on hand, and my cutter that I have. It's a professional grade cutter so that I can cut the chipboard. Anyway, let's get to it. Here are some items that you will need. Your Cricut maker, your Cricut foiling tool. I used the bold tip. 4 sheets of color cardstock in the color of your choice. The measurements will be in the description. Your foil sheet with the tape to hold it on your paper. A non-stick mat, a big bite, rulers, plastic covered pliers, X-Acto knife, pick, bone folder, and scissors. Cording or ribbon of your choice, 4 eyelets, corner mounts, and a scoreboard. 2 pieces of chipboard. Measurements will be in the description. 65-pound paper in a coordinating color for the inside pages. Score tape or heavy-duty tape. Art glitter glue. A template to make your holes for your cover and your pages. For the Cricut portion of this tutorial, I will do my best to explain what I did. If you have any questions, you can add them to the comments below, and I'll do my best to get back to you and answer as the best I can. So for the fonts that I used, I went to dafont.com and found fonts that I liked. The names and the wedding guest words are in Aerotis, A-E-R-O-T-I-S. The ampersand is in A Auto Signature. The Aerotis font did not have an ampersand symbol, so I had to find one that I felt best matched the names and the wedding guest words. The last name here is done in Champagne and Limousines, and when you type that in, you're going to use the ampersand, not the word and, to find it. So here are those fonts. Because the ampersand is not the same font, I had to type it separate and then line it up in between the names. And how I did that was I typed the name and I put several spaces in between, and then I came and I placed this ampersand pretty much where I wanted it, but I wanted to make sure that it was lined up with the word and looked more cohesive. So I hit the ampersand and then I hit the shift, and while I have the shift key depressed, I click the names, so it puts it as one box here. And then I go up to the align portion and I said center vertically, and it's, I don't know if you saw it, but it shifted just a little bit down. If I were to hit align bottom, it would go to the lowest point of the font that's used. So then right here would be the Y. As you can see, it's on the same level now as the Y, but that's not where I want it. I want it centered vertically so it looks more cohesive and all one thing. Then I want to attach that so that when I go to foil it, it won't put the ampersand over here. It'll only print the Brittany and Caleb, and the ampersand won't be there. It'll be in another spot. So to line all these up, I click the first line, second line, and third line, and I want to align those horizontally. They're already aligned. If I don't like the spacing here, I can always click the word and then hit my arrow up symbol, and it will keep it on the same plane and move it up or down however I see that I want it. You're supposed to be able to hit the shift bar and do the same thing, but I've found that mine jumps, as you just saw, it jumps a little bit. So I want this aligned horizontally. Then I want to attach it again so that this will foil exactly how I see it on my canvas. It will foil it that way on the paper. So how I get it positioned on the paper is I created a rectangle. I just have to find it. There it is. I created a rectangle the size of my paper, and the size of my paper is 9 5/8 by 12. And the reason it's much larger than the finished project book cover is because I take a 1/2 inch and I wrap the 1/2 inch all the way around the chipboard. So when this is done, this will be centered exactly where I want it on here. And to do that, I click the words, shift, then the other object, hit align, and I want to center it completely in the middle. Now, I can move this around my thing, but I don't really want to group it right now because I want to do a couple other things, and then I'm going to remove the rectangle. So you'll notice this circle here. We're going to use that in a minute. Come over here to the position on my mat. Cricut has a default when you go to put your mat in your machine of 1/4 inch all the way around, so you actually lose an inch. And because this piece of paper is 12 inches and I want to be able to put this exactly in the center of my 12-inch wide paper, I want to make sure that the paper is 1/4 inch off of the edge. And how I do that is I go up here, the X position is the left side, the Y position is the top line. So for that, I want to go to 0.25. And I think I have it there. For this Y, I want to make sure I can put it on one of the lines that's here. So I want to position that at the 2. So this should be positioned right at the 2 and at the 0.25. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the distance that I have it from the top to the side, it's 2 inches down, and then 1/4 of an inch from the side. Now what I want to do is put this all the way up in the corner at the 0, 0 mark. I'm going to hide my piece of paper / rectangle, and then I want to click on the circle, hit the shift, and click on my words. And then I'm going to hit attach. So now when I go to put my piece of paper on my mat, I want to make sure that I'm 0.25 over and 2 inches down. So here I've just lined up my Tim Holtz rulers. Here I have it marked on the 2/4, 0.25 is what I mean, the 1/4 inch mark. And then this is down 2 inches from the top. And that way I can just line my paper right there in the corner of this, and it will be in the proper position. That's the quickest, easiest way to put your paper on your mat in the position that you want it. One way to position the foil on the paper where you want it is to go here on your screen and see where the writing is on your mat. And I have this blown up just a bit so that you can see the writing. Let me go back a little here. So if you look, this line here is the 5-inch mark, and then down here is the 8-inch mark. So it was probably about a 1/2 inch below the 8-inch mark. So I just lined my foil up on those marks, and I cut it a little larger so that I wouldn't get into trouble with possibly going off where I wanted it. So here is where I placed it. Now, another suggestion when you're placing the tape on the foil, it has a lot of static in it, and it's a real pain in the butt to try and get this to stay and be tight where you're supposed to have it tight on the paper. So again, my Tim Holtz rulers to the rescue, and all I did was lay my ruler on it, and then I put the tape down, and then I transferred over to this side and put the ruler down here, and then put the tape down, and so forth around the whole square. It just makes it a little easier to get that tape on the foil. That was part of some of the problems that I had before, was that the tape would static cling to the foil, and then I would try and take it off, and it would pull the foil off, and it would mess up the foil sheet. So one little trick that I've learned here and there with the foil is to put the ruler on there to hold the foil down while you tape it. Okay, so I've hit the go button, and I have set my base material to 65-pound cardstock. And now I need to put my foil tool in the compartment right here, whatever you call this thing, the carrier. And if you remember, we put that circle in the top corner. That's a basic cut thing. You could do whatever. You could say write it, or, you know, however you want to put that circle in the top to make sure you can get the writing where you want it on your project. It's going to read cut. You can press right through that. It comes up at the end, so you can unload your mat and then just hit cancel on your screen. Here's what I just did. It says not to unload the mat, but to take the foil off and cut, but I don't need that circle cut, so I just went ahead and unloaded my mat, and now I'm just going to hit cancel. As you can see, the foil ripped. Now, I don't know what it's going to look like underneath. This is actually my second attempt at this. This is what's so frustrating about the foil. People say you have to put it on really tight. I've put it on tight, it rips. I've put it on semi-loose and it rips. It's very temperamental. So you have to have patience when you're working with this stuff. So let's see what it actually looks like under the foil. Yeah, see, it didn't go as well as I had hoped. You can see a little bit of ghosting around here, and the E and the N did not come out very well. It's actually showing up better on camera than it is in person. It does not look good to me at all. So off camera, I used my glitter pen to fill in those areas, and it worked pretty well. I am not going to do a third attempt at this. So let me move on to the next steps of making this book. The next thing we're going to do is score a 1/2 inch on every side all the way around. They're all scored 1/2 inch around, and if you know anything about scoring on these, you'll know that you bend it in the opposite direction. So we have the indentation here. We're going to bend it back on that score line. And we're just going to and force that score line all the way around on each side. Next, we want to miter these corners. So I'm going to take my scissors and just cut diagonal across that corner on each side. And I may have to work with that a little bit once I go to mount this on the chipboard. It's just so that when we fold it in, it gives us that nice corner. Like I said, I probably have to trim it down just a little more when we get to that point. So now I just want to dry fit this to make sure I've done my measurements correctly. So this will go up against this edge on the score line, and this will go against this edge on this score line, leaving that 1/4 inch in between. The next thing we're going to do is put score tape on these pieces. Now I have several different sizes of score tape that I use for this. The quickest way to get this covered is to use this larger, wider score tape. They do sell sheets of score tape, so you could just lay the whole thing on and not have to do what I'm about to do. But I don't have that, and I didn't feel like buying any more because I, again, am not making the albums like I used to. Now the best way I can do this is just to go off of it a little bit to make sure I get full coverage, and then I'll trim it down. That's one section down. And let's see, will this cover? No. And again, just going to put it off the edge. This just gives a smoother cover finish. So I used to just use several strips of the score tape on the covers, and it didn't give as smooth a finish. And again, this is why we do it on the sticky mat. So I'm just going to trim that down. Then I just want to make sure I burnish this onto the chipboard really well. It'll make sure that the paper, when I put the paper on, it will adhere really well. I have my 4 pieces of chipboard covered in glue. And again, that's the front, and that's the back. We are going to work on the back. I always work on the back first because if I screw up, I don't have to worry about the foil. And this gives me almost like a practice. So the first one I'm going to put down is this. This is the 3/4 by 8 5/8. And I'm going to start at the corner, top corner. So you peel the backing off of the tape. So as you can see, I did it pretty good. And I have that 1/4 inch gap between the 2 pieces. Now what I want to do is flip this over, and I need to work this crease right here. Don't dig into it or you will rip your paper. if you push this like this or this down into it, you're going to rip it. So if you have a smooth edge on your bone folder, just work that corner or work the creases out and do it on both sides. So if you see, I'm doing it on this side and on this side. So that'll give me that crease that I need to be able to bend the page. I've worked this crease pretty well. This is again the back panel. And I'm going to show you part of the front panel just because the front panel is going to be different, because this was just a plain piece of paper that we scored in the measurement that we needed. The front panel, because it has the writing on it, you have to make sure we put the edge on the right side, because we want this to be the small piece, which is the 3/4 by 8 5/8, and then this part is going to be the larger one. So I'm going to flip it like this and put this here so it's in the right spot. And I always second guess myself, so I'm just going to look again. I'm going to here. So I have the chipboard pieces on the cover, front and back. And the next step is to make sure my corners are going to meet up well. And if you see, this corner is going to have a little bit extra here, which might get in the way when I try to fold this corner down. So it'll give you a little bit too much material. So I'm just going to go through and trim those pieces to make sure that there's nothing going to stick up or stick out when these meet up. So that gives you a much nicer corner. And then I go in with the bone folder and round that out a little bit. I have burnished the sides of these with the tape to make sure that their tape is on good, and it's going to adhere both the paper to the and the chipboard together. And how I've done that is just to go along the edge like this. Be careful when you go here so you don't indent it too much. And then I've just taken the side of it and rolled over it like that. And to make sure that you're going to be able to get this part to bend when you open and close the book, you have to be really careful to go into that crease to try and stretch the paper fiber in between there. And I do have to say, the paper that I used on this was from Country Craft Creations, and it's their artesian cardstock, so it's more of a linen cardstock. It is still cardstock, but it has more bendability to it. And some of the other papers, like Recollections and things like that, will crack when you try and do stuff like this. And that's not to say that this won't crack. It's just this is a little more forgiving. So you just have to work it a little bit more and try and get those paper fibers to break down so that they'll bend into the crease here. We're going to do the end flaps first. And all I'm going to do is take my stuff off, the backing release paper off of that, and then I'm going to run a bead of glue along the edge. Here we go. Was a little much at the beginning there. So again, just take your bone folder and push it up against as tight as you can. And I start in the middle here. So now this is glued down. And then I can go through like this. this glue dries clear, so you don't need to worry about it too much. I put a little too much in there. I'm not really supposed to have that much in there, but it'll be all right. So one edge done, just to show you again how I did it. I'm going to take the release paper off, put a bead of glue here. Again, I'm not putting that much down. I didn't need that much. It just gobbed out because I unclogged it. And then I'm going to, again, work it. Start in the middle. Now that one's done. And now for the edges. And you see that corner is nice and crisp. These corners aren't going to matter too much because we are going to cover those with these corner mounts or brackets or whatever you call them. These are Tim Holtz. I don't know if they're still available. They're really old. I've used almost all of mine up. In fact, these are the last two brass ones I have. So there's some paper fibers here. I just tucked them in on each corner. This one you can actually see better. So there's some paper fibers there, and I'll just tuck them in, which will cover that corner so that when I fold this over, you won't see that. It'll look like a nice crisp corner. For the inside of this, we are going to cover it with these other two pieces of paper that we cut at 8.5 by 10 3/4. And that should cover the whole thing, leaving just a little bit of a reveal around the edge. And if you don't like how much that is, if you want more, you want less, you'll have to just figure out the measurement for yourself. Now, part of the reason that I cut it longer than what I normally do, which you probably wouldn't know how I normally do it, but I did it because of this crease that we're going to have to put into this piece of paper. So I'm going to mount this paper a little closer to the right side where this portion is, so that when after it's adhered, I can crease this and work the fibers so that it'll fall into that crease a little better. And I'll still have enough here when I punch the holes to cover that, and it won't pull it away from it. I'm going to put the adhesive on the paper now and not on the chipboard. I have put the glue sheet on the back of these, and I couldn't get too close here, and I'll again just fold the glue over so it's not a big deal. But I wanted to show you a mess up that I did when I put this on. So there was something else on the sheet and it got trapped. So all I'm going to do is just hide this on the edge so it's not going to be noticeable. It's going to be right on this piece here, and you won't notice it once it's everything's adhered and locked in, because the other papers that are going to be here will cover that. How I like to do this one is start up here, because we're going to burnish it down to this crease, and then I'm going to use my bone folder to work this part here into the crease. Now I want to make sure I stop when I get right to that place. I'm going to pull this off the rest of the way and try and hold this up some, because I want this material to go into this crease before this side gets glued down. And this is the only way I know how to do this. So I did pretty good getting the edge lined up. So there's almost no room. If you want a little more room, again, you can cut it a little shorter. And if you do have glue sticking out, if you have a powder tool, or if you just have powder in your house, you can put powder on it and it will take the sticky away, so it won't adhere to anything as you're flipping pages and stuff. So I have two different ones that I use sometimes. And again, just put the powder on the edge and it'll take the sticky away, and then you can wipe the powder off. You want to just work this edge by bending it back and forth. So you can see the paper fibers are stretched a lot, but they really need to be worked before you put this together. And try and go from the edge of the one chipboard piece to the other edge. In other words, this edge, and try and work that paper on both edges. Because you want this book to open flat, which is the purpose of why I made it, so that when people are signing it or putting their pictures in, it's flat and they have a place to go instead of having it buckled up and all the pages scrunched over. And as you can see, some of the glitter is coming up. Again, just make sure you take some of the sticky off of this before you start putting it onto the front. And you can get some of that extra flecking, those flecks of gold, so they're not all over the place. I mean, you're going to have some anyway because of the way that this foil works, but it'll get some of it off. So that is your front and back cover of the book. The next thing that we're going to have to do is punch holes for the cording that we're going to put through to hold all the pages together. And I do have a template for that I've used. And all I did was measure, I think I did 2 inches from the top and 2 inches from the bottom. And this is for the cover. And then these are for the pages, because we're going to put the pages in, but they're a little bit smaller than the cover. So as you can see, the holes line up, and then we run the cording through the whole thing and tie it in a bow right here. I've marked the interior of those holes, and now I have to punch them out with this. Now this is a big bite, and it will punch through all of this material that's together. So I've put it on the largest hole setting, and now I have to come down here and line it up. Here is the mark for the cover, and here's where I need to punch it. So I need to make sure I get it lined up perfectly with that. Well, that's where it's going. Now I just need to see if my eyelet will fit, and it does. And now I do the other holes the same way. Now for the eyelets. I'm not going to use my big bite because it is very cumbersome and I'm having a hard time maneuvering it around the hole. So I've set this, which is a crocodile. It's made by We Are Memory Keepers also in conjunction with the big bite. The big bite just has a farther reach on the paper, but I don't need that far of a reach since we're doing the edge. So I just need to put this small piece here, this little metal thing on the bottom, and then I put the eyelet in the hole that I've created in the album cover, and then I'm just going to squeeze it really tight and hopefully it works. I set the eyelets in the cover. They're not exactly beautiful on the interior, at least this one is not looking that great, but that's the way it looks on the outside. So at least the cover looks pretty good and finished. I did go through a few of them before I could get them set, and I struggled so much with it I decided not to even videotape it. It wasn't pretty. For the pages, make sure they're cut down to 11 by 8.5, and you're going to score at the 1/2 inch and the 1 inch mark. Then on the first score line, you're going to fold your paper back. Then we're going to put score tape on this flap and glue those two together. And what that does is it helps reinforce the paper so it doesn't tear when you're opening and closing your pages. And this extra score line that we've created right here, that's just to help when you turn your pages so they don't get hung up. Then we're going to mark the 1/2 inch mark, the 1/2 inch score line there with the template of where you want your holes to line up. And then after you get several of the pages done, you can stack them together if you have a big bite, and you can do the holes all at one time for several of the pages, depending on how many pages you're going to put in there. So some of the finishing touches are to put these corner mounts on. They're fairly simple to do. And I'm putting them just on the front because that's what's going to be seen. So you just put it here, turn it over. Now, there is a tool that you can use for this, but it's silly to buy it. I just use these pliers that I got in the jewelry section at Michael's, and you just squeeze it on there. So all I have to do now is thread the back cover through all the pages and into the front cover, and the book will be finished. And I'll show you what she chose to use. And I will actually have to iron this, but her son is in the Navy, so she chose these, and I'll just thread it through the back and then tie it in a bow in the front. I thought I'd show how I thread this through. This is a ribbon. I use cording on mine, and she may decide that she wants cording on it later. She said that if this didn't work, she wanted this, which looks a little bit like rope from the Navy. But to get it to go through smoothly, I just take some tape and fold the ribbon over, and then I wrap the tape around it. This ribbon's actually really stretchy, so she may not like this at all. But that's how I get it started. And then I just push it through, and then I line all the pages up. and put it through the pages as well. So it's going to look like that on the back, and then it will have a bow on the front after I put all of the pages through. So here's the finished product. The book, again, will lay flat when people go to sign it, or if they want to put the pictures in like my son and his wife want to do. You can get photo mount, corner mounts at any of the hobby stores. Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby. Got these at Hobby Lobby, I believe. And they come in different colors. And gold would probably match. I'll probably throw a couple sheets in here to show her that she can do that. But whatever page you go to, it'll lay flat, which I think is really cool. Now, I left this a little long so she could adjust it if she wanted more pages in it. And this ribbon does fray, but if you take a lighter and you just light the lighter very carefully and singe the end of the ribbon, it will hold and it will stop fraying. So I hope you liked it. I hope the filming wasn't too bad, that you got the idea anyway. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Leave comments in the comments section if you have any questions. Let me know and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching.